What if the bag of healthy, frozen vegetables sitting in your freezer right now isn't as healthy as you think? Before we get into it, hit that like button, tap subscribe, and send this to the person who does your grocery shopping. They need to see this before their next trip to the store. Here's the thing nobody tells you when you're standing in that frozen aisle. Every bag looks almost the same. Bright colors, green leaves, a photo of a farm on the front. But what's actually inside those bags can be worlds apart. Some brands are cutting corners you can't see. Others are doing everything right and just don't shout about it. Today we're going through 10 brands that deserve a second look and 3 that genuinely earn your trust. Worst first, best saved for last. Let's get into it. 1. The cheapest store brand on the shelf. Let's start with the most obvious one. Every big supermarket has its own no-name frozen vegetable line, and it's almost always the cheapest bag on the shelf. That low price feels like a win, but price is a signal, and in frozen food, it usually tells you where the savings came from. Budget store brands compete on one thing only: cost. To hit rock-bottom prices, companies often source vegetables from wherever growing and processing is cheapest that season. That can mean different farms, different countries, and different agricultural standards from one batch to the next. There's rarely any public information about which farms supplied that specific bag, what pesticide programs those farms used, or how the vegetables were washed before freezing. Here's why that matters. Industrial frozen vegetable plants move an enormous amount of product every hour. At that speed, deep individual washing takes a back seat to keeping the line moving. Flash freezing fast is what keeps the product edible and cheap. Thorough cleaning takes time, and time costs money. When a company is fighting to be the lowest price on the shelf, cleaning protocols are one of the easiest places to quietly trim. None of this means the vegetables are dangerous. It means you're buying a product with almost zero transparency behind it. No published testing, no named farms, no public standards beyond the legal minimum. You're trusting a label with no receipts behind it. 2. The brand with nicer packaging but the same supply chain. Now here's where it gets interesting, because the next tier up isn't really different, it just looks different. Mid-range supermarket brands often use the exact same commodity supply chain as the cheapest option. The packaging is nicer, the font looks more premium, but peel that back and you'll usually find the same bulk suppliers, the same processing plants, sometimes even the same farms. The only real difference is marketing budget. This is where supply chains genuinely lose track of details. Large processors often buy from commodity brokers, meaning they purchase vegetables from whoever can fill an order at the right price that week. That means the farm behind your bag of peas this month might be completely different from the farm behind last month's bag. There's no consistency, because consistency was never the goal. Price was. And here's something that rarely gets talked about. When vegetables from several different suppliers get combined into one processing run, quality gets averaged out. A batch that's slightly lower quality doesn't get thrown away. It gets blended into the bigger batch until it's diluted enough to pass. The problem doesn't disappear. It just gets spread thin enough that you'd never notice. 3. The classic line from a legacy brand. Some brands have been in freezers for generations. That kind of trust is powerful, and companies know it. But a good reputation built decades ago doesn't automatically apply to what's in the bag today. Legacy brands often run 2 separate product lines: a premium organic option and a classic or standard line that uses conventional farming. The classic line is where the brand's history is doing most of the heavy lifting, because on paper, it's not that different from any other conventional frozen vegetable. Conventional farming, by definition, allows synthetic pesticide use throughout the growing season. That doesn't make the food unsafe under current regulations, but it does mean there's no independent verification of what was used or how much residue remains. Organic certification exists specifically to answer that question. Skipping it means skipping the paperwork trail that would otherwise reassure you. There's also something worth noticing in how legacy brands market their classic lines. The marketing usually focuses on freezing speed and freshness at the moment of freezing. It rarely mentions what happened before the freeze, the washing, the pesticide program, the farm practices. That's not necessarily deception, but it is a choice about what story gets told and what gets left out. 4. Steam bag convenience lines. Steamer bags feel like the Art healthy choice. Toss it in the microwave. 4 minutes later, you have a hot vegetable side dish with almost no effort. The convenience is genuinely great. But there are two separate questions here, and people usually only think about one of them. The first question is about the vegetables themselves. Many steam bag lines use standard conventional produce, the same as any other non-organic frozen vegetable. The bag doesn't automatically mean higher quality vegetables. It just means added convenience. The second question is about the bag itself. These pouches are engineered plastic designed to withstand direct microwave heat. Even bags labeled BPA-free simply mean one specific chemical was removed. It doesn't mean every replacement compound has been studied as thoroughly or for as long. Heating plastic in direct contact with food is exactly the condition under which chemical migration is most likely to happen. Regulatory agencies consider these bags safe under tested conditions, but safe under tested conditions, and the healthiest possible way to eat vegetables 3 times a week for years are two very different standards. One is a legal minimum. The other is what you actually care about. 5 vegetables that look too perfect. Have you ever noticed how some bags of frozen vegetables look almost unnaturally uniform? Every carrot the exact same length. Every floret of broccoli practically identical. That's not a coincidence, and it's not really a good sign either. That kind of visual consistency usually comes from industrial sorting systems, designed to reject anything that doesn't match a specific size and shape. And here's the part that should genuinely bother you. The vegetables that get rejected for looking imperfect are often the ones grown a little smaller or a little irregular, without heavy chemical size assistance. Research on produce nutrition has repeatedly shown that smaller, less uniform vegetables can carry higher concentrations of antioxidants and micronutrients than their picture-perfect counterparts. So a bag optimized to look flawless on the shelf isn't necessarily a bag optimized for your health. It's optimized for your eyes. Appearance and nutrition are not the same selection criteria, and when a company has to choose, appearance usually wins because appearance sells bags. Alright, we've covered the first 5, and this is exactly the halfway point where most people stop paying close attention. Don't. The next 5 get more specific, and the final 3 brands might genuinely change what you buy this week. If you're finding this useful, drop a quick comment telling me which brand surprised you the most so far. It helps this video reach more people who need to see it. 6. Regional brands with no national oversight. Every part of the country has a frozen vegetable brand that's beloved locally but barely known outside its region. People grow up eating it. Their parents bought it. There's real emotional trust built into that loyalty. But regional popularity isn't the same thing as rigorous quality control. Smaller regional brands often source from multiple conventional farms across several states, and quality standards can shift depending on which supplier fills a particular order. Without consistent, published testing standards or third-party certification, there's no external check confirming that quality stays steady from batch to batch. The company's own word is often the only guarantee you get. This isn't an accusation that these brands are doing something wrong. It's a reminder that regional trust is emotional, not scientific. A brand can be genuinely well-loved and still lack the kind of independent verification that would actually prove consistent quality behind the scenes. 7. Store brands owned by massive retail chains. Big chain supermarkets almost always sell their own private label frozen vegetables, and these operate on a very specific formula. Source from whoever hits the price target, package it cleanly, and let the shelf placement do the selling. It works because these products are usually placed at eye level, right next to their pricier competitors. The challenge is transparency. These private label supply chains typically don't publish sourcing regions, pesticide testing protocols, or residue limits beyond what regulation legally requires. The nutrition label tells you calories and vitamins. It tells you nothing about how the vegetables were grown or handled before they were frozen. Mixed vegetable blends make this more complicated. A single bag might contain carrots, peas, corn, and green beans, each one sourced through a separate supply stream, potentially from a completely different supplier with a completely different farming standard. If one of those suppliers is cutting corners, that compromise doesn't disqualify the whole batch. It just gets blended into the mix, and you'd never know which vegetable in the bag came from where. 8. Brands sourced through commodity brokers. This next category is less about a specific brand and more about a specific business model, one used by a surprising number of well-known private labels. Vegetables sourced through commodity brokers pass through middlemen who aggregate produce from multiple farms and sell it into retail channels, often without tracking exactly which farm a shipment originally came from. By the time the vegetables reach a processing facility, the original farm may already be undocumented. This isn't necessarily intentional deception. It's simply how the broker system is built. Tracking every individual farm isn't required for the system to function, so most companies using this model don't bother. The result is a convenient kind of plausible deniability. Nobody can tell you exactly where your vegetables were grown, because the system was never designed to capture that information in the first place. If traceability matters to you, this is the exact model to watch for. Words like farm fresh or select printed on packaging mean very little when the company itself can't confirm which farm the product came from. 9. Budget grocery chain exclusive brands. Discount grocery chains have built loyal followings by offering genuinely good prices on groceries, and their frozen vegetable lines are often part of that appeal. But the efficiency model that keeps prices low creates real trade-offs, and this is where it shows up most clearly. These exclusive brands are frequently produced by rotating third-party contractors competing for the retailer's supply contract. The winning bid changes based on cost, meaning the company producing your frozen corn this quarter might be completely different from 3 months ago. The packaging stays the same. The actual source behind it doesn't have to. There's also a quieter issue tied to how these retailers operate. Leaner store formats and fewer distribution points can mean frozen products spend more time sitting in warehouses and store freezers before reaching a customer. Frozen doesn't mean nutritionally frozen in time. Vitamins gradually degrade even at freezing temperatures, and the final nutrient content depends on both the quality at harvest and the total time spent in the cold chain. Longer time in storage means more nutrient loss, even if the vegetables look and taste exactly the same. 10. Any brand that uses the word premium without backing it up. This last one on the skip list isn't a single brand. It's a pattern, and once you notice it, you'll see it everywhere in the frozen aisle. Some brands price themselves noticeably higher than their competitors and lean heavily on words like premium, quality, or select, all without any independent certification or published testing to back those words up. When you pay more for a product, you're making an implicit deal. You're trusting that the extra money bought something real, better sourcing, better testing, cleaner farming practices. That's the entire logic behind paying more. But price alone doesn't guarantee any of that. A higher price tag can just as easily be paying for better packaging design, a bigger marketing budget, and more persuasive language on the bag, while the vegetables inside were sourced through the exact same conventional, untraceable channels as the cheapest option on the shelf. At least budget brands are usually honest about what they are. The genuinely tricky ones are the products that charge premium prices while quietly cutting the same corners everyone else does. That gap between what a label promises and what's actually inside the bag is often the hardest thing for a shopper to catch, because it hides behind a price tag that feels like proof. That's the skip list. 10 patterns to watch for, all built on the same foundation, a lack of transparency that most shoppers never think to question. But this next part is the good news because the category isn't broken. Some brands are doing this the right way, and they're easier to identify than you'd think. Before we get there, if this video has changed how you're going to shop, subscribe now so you don't miss the next one. It genuinely helps the channel keep making videos like this. Best option number 3, certified organic national brands. Let's start building the trustworthy list, because these do exist, and they're often sitting on the exact same shelf as everything we just covered. The single most powerful thing a frozen vegetable brand can offer you is genuine USDA organic certification. This isn't a marketing word. It's a legal status that requires independent, third-party verification and regular testing by certifying bodies with no financial relationship to the company selling the product. Certified organic vegetables cannot be grown using synthetic pesticides, synthetic fertilizers, or genetically modified seeds. These aren't voluntary promises. They're enforceable conditions, and violating them means losing the certification entirely. Brands that carry this certification also tend to publish more information about their farming partners and growing regions than budget brands do. That's not a coincidence. Certification requires documentation, and once a company is already tracking that information for legal compliance, sharing more of it with customers becomes far easier. Processing for certified organic lines typically prioritizes speed to freezer for a specific reason. Freezing vegetables closer to the moment of harvest locks in vitamins and antioxidants that would otherwise degrade during longer transport and storage. Independent nutritional comparisons consistently show organic frozen vegetables holding higher levels of these nutrients compared to conventional competitors. Yes, certified organic frozen vegetables usually cost more, but that price difference is paying for something concrete and independently verified, not just better packaging. Best option number 2, brands with long-standing organic-only supply chains. The next tier up belongs to a smaller group of brands that have built their entire operation around organic farming for decades, long before it was a popular trend. That kind of history matters because it usually means deeper, more established relationships with the same farms over long periods of time, rather than shifting supply chains chasing the lowest bid each season. These brands often carry both USDA organic certification and non-GMO verification, two separate systems with their own independent testing requirements and no shared oversight between them. Long-term farming partnerships tend to produce a kind of quality accountability that short-term supplier contracts simply can't replicate, because both sides have a long-term reputation to protect. What really separates this tier is testing depth. Some of these brands test every production lot against hundreds of potential contaminants, covering pesticide residues, heavy metals, and other markers, and make that testing data available for customers to review. That level of transparency is rare, and it's the kind of thing that's very difficult to fake convincingly over a long period of time. Processing for these lines usually happens in facilities that handle organic product exclusively, which eliminates the risk of cross-contamination from conventional product running through the same equipment. If you see a bag that lists the country of origin, the harvest date, and the freeze date, all details that go beyond what's legally required, that's usually a strong signal of a company that has decided transparency is part of its identity, not just a legal obligation. Best option number 1, store brand organic lines from health-focused retailers. This might be the most surprising entry on the entire list, because it's not the most expensive option. It might actually be the most balanced one. Several health-focused grocery chains now offer their own store-brand organic frozen vegetable lines, and these often carry both USDA organic certification and non-GMO verification as a baseline. then add extra layers of testing on top. Beyond the legal organic minimum, some of these retailers test for contaminants at thresholds stricter than federal requirements, covering pesticide residue, heavy metals, and microbial safety. And this testing tends to be genuinely documented rather than simply claimed. Sourcing for these lines is often tracked with real detail about farming regions and practices, and some partner farms use regenerative agriculture methods that go beyond simply avoiding synthetic inputs. These methods actively work to rebuild soil health over time, and healthier soil has been linked to more nutrient-dense produce. Processing typically happens in dedicated organic facilities, with freezing beginning within just a few hours of harvest, which is about as close to peak freshness as frozen vegetables can realistically get. Here's what makes this tier genuinely stand out. Pricing on these store-brand organic lines is often surprisingly close to mid-range conventional brands, not the steep premium you'd expect. That means the usual trade-off between price and quality, the one driving almost every decision in the frozen aisle, becomes much smaller here. You're not paying dramatically more for meaningfully better sourcing, testing, and freshness. You're paying close to what you'd already spend on an average bag, for a product operating in a completely different category. So here's where all of this leaves us. 10 patterns built on the same quiet assumption that most shoppers will never ask where their vegetables actually came from, how they were tested, or what premium really means on a label. 3 categories that made a different choice. One that costs more to maintain and shows up in real, verifiable ways once you know what to look for. None of this means you need to panic about what's already in your freezer. It means you now know exactly what questions to ask the next time you're standing in that aisle. Look for real certification, not just reassuring words. Look for freeze dates and sourcing details, not just a photo of a farm on the packaging. Frozen vegetables remain one of the smartest, most affordable ways to eat well: low waste, long shelf life, genuinely good nutrition, when they come from a source that's actually earned your trust. The category isn't the problem. Not asking questions is. Next time you're standing in that freezer aisle, you'll read every single label differently.